Today I'm just going to take y'all along for what happens around here in a day. So starting out, I've milked the cow. I just shared a video on how that's going. Honestly, since that video about a week and a half ago, everything has changed. She decided she did not like to stand still and be milked. She decided she did not like to let down at all without her calf nursing. So we have done some milk stanchion training. We haven't actually milked her in the stanchion yet, but it's been a learning curve for sure. So training a cow to milk has definitely been more challenging than I thought. The actual milking is actually very simple, but getting the cow to cooperate for you, to let down for you, to be still for you has been a challenge. So we're still getting a little over a quart, anywhere between a quart and a half gallon a day, which I am grateful for. It is slowly getting more each and every day. So we are working through that, but that is just a little milk update. I will keep y'all posted on how that continues to go. So for breakfast today, we're having sourdough crepe. So this is just a super easy way to get in a lot of eggs into our breakfast without just having fried eggs or scrambled eggs or boiled eggs, because I've said this before, we have an abundance of eggs right now and that's pretty much our breakfast every single day. But if I don't change it up a few days a week, my kids will get tired of it. So I will link the video where I originally shared this recipe, walking you through how I make it. But it's basically anywhere from 8 to 10 eggs, but really whatever I want to kind of cram into the crepes. A cup of discard or more. This can be active discard or just discard straight out of the fridge, cold, non-active discard. 3 tablespoons of your fat of choice. I use butter, coconut oil, or lard. Teaspoon of salt, about a 1/4 cup of milk, and then whatever add-ins you want. So today I'm doing some frozen blueberries cooked in some bone broth. I've shared this little hack before, but anytime I make frozen berries for a side dish, I cook them down and simmer them in bone broth. This is just a super easy way to get more bone broth into our diet without anyone even noticing. So this is some turkey broth from the bird my husband just harvested last week. So we got several gallons of broth from that one bird he harvested. Actually, the morning I was milking with y'all in my last video is the morning he harvested this bird that gave us so much of this delicious bone broth. So in the middle of these crepes, we added cottage cheese, a peach jam, those bone broth blueberries, and I topped it with honey. These are so delicious. You could also make these savory by stuffing them with cheese or meat, sour cream. It's just a really versatile recipe and a super easy way to get in a lot of eggs. We also added some chocolate milk. So I've shared chocolate milk before, our collagen chocolate milk, and I usually make this from the Perfect Supplements collagen chocolate powder, but I didn't have any open right now. What I had right now at my Access was just regular collagen, just the regular Perfect Supplements collagen. So instead I made sort of a chocolate syrup sauce and then poured it into the milk. So in my frother, I blended collagen, just the plain collagen, the cacao powder, a little bit of the mushroom immunity from Perfect Supplements. This is just another little add-in supplement just to boost our immune system. I always am adding this to things for my family, and a splash of maple syrup. So I blend all this in my frother. I'll go ahead and tell you, I don't actually recommend this frother. I've been asked this before if I would recommend this frother. This is just a really cheap one off Amazon. I do recommend it for blending powders, but I don't recommend it for like frothy, warm, delicious coffee drinks. It does not froth hot liquids very well. It froths cold very, very good. Blends in collagens and supplement powders, things like that, cacao powder. It blends that very well, but it does not do so good for like a warm, milky froth if you're wanting it for your coffee. So there's just my little review on this frother that I do use all the time. I do love it for powders, but not for actually coffee. So we have some kids activities tonight, so I am getting dinner prepped now. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning and I'm starting a soup. So usually I make soups on a stock pot and on the stove top, but I knew we were about to be outside for a lot of the morning, so I just tossed everything in the crock pot. I actually forget to use my crock pot pretty often. It sits in my pantry storage and I just don't ever think about using it because I just grab a stock pot and make the soup. Using the crock pot would make sure it was going to be hot still for us when we got home tonight from our activities, and it just was easier for this day. So all I'm adding is some potatoes, onion, garlic, chickpeas, broth, spices, liver pate. I'm really just rough chopping all of this because I'm going to come back with an immersion blender later and blend all this to a smoother potatoy soup, and then we'll add some bacon tonight when we get back from our activities. But that is getting started while we head out to do some gardening. Let's talk about gardening for a minute because it is spring and everyone is excited about gardening, as are we. My husband is the main gardener in our house. He kind of does all the planning for our gardening, the designing, and I just help with the process, which I love. It's been a blessing because he just really loves this hobby. We both have come to love it more and more each year that we've done gardening. But let's talk about gardening with children. So this takes us about 45 minutes to an hour to water all of our gardens. We have expanded our gardens this year with my kids. My kids are helping me. I'm having to stop and start, of course, to talk with them to make sure they're not tearing up plants. But I wanted to talk about how I make this an enjoyable time with our kids, because I think that for kids to enjoy gardening, you've got to make it enjoyable. You can't constantly get onto them for touching a plant, for picking a strawberry that's not ripe, for breaking a leaf, because the more we pester them about that and nag at them, the less they're going to want to be in the garden. And so I try to think about the generations past of those children, the boomer generation that are in their like 70s, early 80s now, that were forced to help their parents in the garden in their younger years. This was because they literally had to have their garden crops so that they could eat for that year. That's not the case now. We have grocery stores. I realize that growing our own food is going to taste better, it's going to be better for us, but we do have grocery stores to fall back on if my child ruins the entire crop of strawberries or potatoes or something that year. But many of them in that boomer generation, what I was getting at is they have nothing. They don't want anything to do with gardening now because they were just burnt out of it as a child because they were forced to work in the garden. There are exceptions, I will say, but I can think of many in that boomer generation that are just turned off by the work that comes from gardening. So I do believe in teaching our children a work ethic at a very young age, that's very valuable, and teaching them that growing our own foods is better for our bodies, better for our budget, etc. And it's actually a really fun hobby. I don't want my kids to grow up hating this lifestyle like much of that past generation has. So thinking about it, I want my kids to see my husband and I gardening and enjoying the process. Yes, we do prefer to eat the food we freshly grow on our land, but if the crop fails, like I said, if my child pulls up every potato plant by accident, it's not the end of the world. I can still go buy potatoes if I have to. I wouldn't prefer to. We would definitely talk about it with the child about why we don't pull up certain plants. We only pull up weeds. But I want this to be an enjoyable time for my kids, and I don't ever force them to help me in the garden. Now, they actually love helping me in the garden. They see my husband and I enjoying this hobby, enjoying this process. We talk a lot about how the foods we grow from our own soil is so much better for our bodies. We explain that to them. So they have learned to love the process of gardening. But that is one thing my husband and I have always said, is we will not force our children to go out in the garden for hours and hours and work. We will love their help and we will encourage them to help us and we will invite them to help us always, but I'm never going to force it because, again, this is my husband and I's hobby, and honestly, I believe if they see us enjoying it all of these years, they will come to enjoy it. But that's just something I've thought a lot about with those past generations who now hate gardening, and I just don't want my kids to be raised that way where they absolutely hate this lifestyle. But I think we're on a good start of teaching them about gardening, encouraging them when they're in the garden, trying not to scold them too much when they accidentally bump a plant or step on a plant, because right now they actually really love being in the garden with us. So one more thing I wanted to add is we have this landscape tarp in our large market garden, because right around the time that this garden is going to need a lot of attention, a lot of weeding, a lot of hoeing, I will be freshly having a baby and postpartum, so it will all fall to my husband to keep this huge market garden, 100-foot row market garden up when I'm in the postpartum season. So we opted to budget for the landscape tarps this year, hoping that we can use them for several years in a row, but this is just the plan for this year. We've never done this before. I actually am loving the ease of the gardening now that we have everything planted. It's easy to keep it maintained. I'm hoping that it served us well through this postpartum summer, because though I want to be out in the garden helping my husband, there are going to be several weeks where I'm going to stay in the house, just walk outside for fresh air, enjoying the new baby cuddles that I'm so excited that is coming very soon. As I already mentioned, I have dinner going because we have kids activities tonight, so we will not get home until after 7, which is way past our dinner time. But where we do our activities, it's a good hour drive. So at that point, my kids have played their game, they're hungry, so I always pack a small, light dinner so they can eat on the way home, and then we eat our real dinner when we get home. So I always put boiled eggs. I have these little lunch boxes. This is my son's, oddly, he's older. And then this is my 2 daughters. So they just share one. I need to get some more of one size or the other. This is just what I have right now. So I have a boiled egg. I'm gonna be making some little smashed meat patties for lunch. So I'll add like a half a meat patty in here. And then making some sourdough chocolate chip cookies. I have been testing out some postpartum recipes for my family, not for me yet. I'm gonna get that going soon too, but I had pre-made some of my chocolate chip sourdough cookie recipe, frozen into logs so that it can be wrapped in saran wrap so they can be chopped up, kind of like slice and bake. That's what I'm cooking now. We're testing out how that recipe goes. I think it's gonna be fine. It's just frozen cookie dough that I popped out, sliced. I'm gonna put a small sourdough chocolate chip cookie in each little lunch box. So boiled egg, a half of a meat patty, which I'll make those for lunch, and then I'll just have a leftover one to put into their little box, and a chocolate chip cookie, and some watermelon. Our in-laws brought us a watermelon, so I will put some watermelon in here too for them to snack on the way home, because I know, like, if I had just gotten done playing a game, I'd want something to tide me over till I had dinner. And the snacks that are offered after kids' athletic events, just, there's nothing in them. There's no nutritional value in them. So my kids know that those foods, like, they just walk on past when they're handed out. This is not a fresh summer watermelon. This is just, my son had been asking for a watermelon. So last time my in-laws came, they just picked up whatever watermelon they could find, and they loved it. So we're ready for a fresh summer watermelon. We're a couple of months out from that. So the snacks offered after kids' sporting events are just sad, guys. It's like a sugary drink, a bag of chips, cookies, sometimes fruit. Sometimes people on their team bring fruit, which is great when they do. My kids will grab that, but they know now that we've talked with our kids, like, we don't deprive our kids of stuff, but we talked about so much how certain foods literally are just poisonous to our bodies, and when we eat those types of foods, we don't feel that good. And my kids have experienced that, even if they're a very young age. We've been somewhere and we've eaten something that we don't normally eat, and they'll tell me they just feel their tummy hurts, or they feel weird, and we talk about, well, we ate such and such today, and that's probably not the best for our bodies, and they just kind of learn. So as I was saying, when they pass out the snacks at the end of these games, these activities, these kids' activities, our kids just literally walk on by. And sometimes I feel like my kids are rude, and I'll be like, just tell them no thank you. But anyways, they've just learned that mom has a good snack for them in the vehicle that they will get on the way home, a snack that's gonna make them feel healthy and nourished and revived after their game. And that's just how we do snacks at sporting events, in case you're wondering. So, and then I have our soup we'll have when we get home. So, but I wanted to show y'all what we do for kids snacks after sporting events and how we kind of avoid the very non-nutritious, non-healthy snack options that are usually presented to kids, to our sweet little kids in their growing bodies after a sporting event. And it's so sad to me that that's just considered normal now at all of these athletic events that kids are in now. It's just very, very sad to me. Boiled egg, watermelon. I'll add the cookie once they cool, and then a half or just a bite of a meat patty just for a little extra protein. And I make them an adrenal juice, which typically adrenal juice is for us is orange juice, coconut water, magnesium, and salt. But since they're just got done running around, I don't really like to give them like a heavy juice. So instead we use some of our Perfect Supplements Arceola powder. Some of this Arceola powder in their place of like the juice. This is the vitamin C formed. Water, Arceola powder, a splash of orange juice, magnesium. We're out of coconut water, so I'll have to use cream of tartar, and I'll show y'all that when I make that drink later. So last year we started a small farm stand that we put out by our road, and we sold fresh produce and floral bouquets that we grew here on our homestead, and it was such a success. We only did it for about a month at the end of last summer when we finally got the build done. We had crops to sell, and it was a really big success. So we have expanded that idea this year and invested in this new antique, it's not new, it's an antique wagon from the 40s or 50s, we're guessing. And today I'm getting that prepped to paint. So I'm just pressure washing it, giving it a good wash down, getting any chippy paint off, which there really wasn't as much chippy paint as we thought because this paint was very stubborn to remove. I actually did not get as much off as I thought I would. We're just getting it cleaned up to get it ready to paint. So I'm excited to bring you along for that process and show y'all the finished design of our farm stand wagon, where we will be selling fresh produce, fresh flowers, coming up in just a few months. For lunch today, we are having some smash burgers. So I have some sourdough tortillas that I fermented yesterday overnight. I've shared the recipe in this video. I'll link it down below. It's called something like our favorite sourdough recipes. It includes like pancakes, biscuits, tortillas. But this tortilla recipe is a weekly staple. I've talked about it many times here. If you haven't tried this tortilla recipe, it is delicious. So I'm getting these rolled out, and then I'm smashing some burgers to cook. Basically, this is just a very thin burger stacked in a tortilla with some delicious toppings. It's a real big hit with our family and a super easy meal to put together. Alright, I told you I would tell you about these kids sports drinks that I'm making for my kids' game tonight. So all I'm doing is, again, using my frother that does not froth well, but it does mix things very well. So I'm adding some Arceola powder from Perfect Supplements. This is just a vitamin C superfood, just to kind of replenish those adrenals when you are in a strenuous sporting event. Cream of tartar. I'm using this instead of coconut water because we are out of coconut water, and this is high in potassium. Splash of orange juice just to give a little bit of extra vitamin C, and salt. So this is basically an adrenal juice, but instead of using orange juice, I'm using the Arceola powder and replacing most of the liquid with water. So I'm going to mix these powders and a little bit of juice just to give it some liquid to froth in, and then add it in with the water in my kids' drinks. So this is a perfect Gatorade replacement for kids at a sporting event. It tastes really light and it's not really heavy on the stomach, but it has all of the important minerals that you need for adrenal support when you are running around, sweating, playing an activity. So try this out if you are looking for an alternative to kids' Gatorades, because those just, all of the ones, even the sugar-free ones, are just filled with not so great stuff. Okay, so we are now back from the kids' activities, and I'm always thankful when we get home this late that I've taken the time to prepare ahead of time for dinner. So it's about 7:30 at this point. Even though my kids had that light snack on the way home that I showed y'all earlier, they're still ready for a real dinner. So we enjoyed the soup with some bacon on top. I added an extra stir of collagen in each one and some cheesy flatbreads I had made from those tortillas at lunch. I made some extra tortillas at lunch, topped it with some cheese, broiled it in the oven, crunched it over our soup, and it was delicious. Always thankful when I think ahead for late nights like this. Thank y'all so much for spending the day with me, and I will talk to y'all in my next video.